Ashes to ashes.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of Till Death Do Us Part, the podcast where you explore everything related to death, funerals, and stories that connect us all. I'm your host, Mike Hamlar from Virginia, and we're going to go around the horn and introduce everybody. We're excited to be here. We came out the group chat. This is number 3. Y'all ready? Number 3. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to stop at the top. We're going to start at the top. Charmaine from Baltimore, Maryland.
How you switch this up this week?
We switched it up this week.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to week 3 of Mini. We digging deep on some personal stuff today. It may shed some tears. It may block some tears because a lot of us have some tough skin. So, tune in and be very interactive with us this week. Questions, we taking all kinds of questions. So please tune in.
All right, thanks, Charmaine. Yeah, we're going to touch on the front row today, but now we're going to go to Tiffanie, the princess.
Hi, everybody. It's Tiffanie, the princess.
Oh, you already said?
This is gonna be my standard greeting. So thank you all for tuning in the last 2 weeks. We appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. We're going to get into some personal stuff this week. Finally, you get to learn a little bit about us. So I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Thanks, Tiffanie. Wendal, down in the bottom, VA in the house.
Good evening, everybody. I want to say welcome to everybody that's on tonight. Share with people to come on so they can enjoy tonight's episode. We appreciate each of you. We're looking forward to tonight. Just sharing some information one with another. Good to see everybody doing well. We survived Easter. We had a great holiday with family and friends. We're glad to be on tonight.
All right, thank you. That's the Deacon Wendal from Virginia. Then we're going to move on to the man from Texas, Adrian.
Hey. Listen, y'all, we are blessed. This is week 3. We are super excited. Episode 3. Listen, y'all, tonight we feed into, like I said earlier, some personal stuff, some intimate things about us, this cast, on how we got on the front row, what we experienced on the front row. And listen, y'all, make sure y'all tune in, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe. And listen, y'all, please ask your questions, interact with us. We excited. Let's go.
All right. Thanks, Adrian. Last but not least, Warren, the baby from VA.
Giving honor to God,
baby man,
who is the head of my life. We made it out the jet! Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody had a great Easter weekend. I hope y'all ate and just was full and just enjoy family and friends, even if you celebrate or you don't celebrate. Every day is a day of
Holy Week.
Holy Week. I hope everybody enjoyed themselves. And this is really going to be a tough episode, I think, for us. Many see us as desensitized, but we do have feelings. And I think that this is going to be a day where you can really see where we come from and what we have to do to make it through.
Yeah,
that's it.
I got my napkin already.
Got your napkin, got your stuff. I wore my glasses just for the occasion today. So just get ready, because this is real talk. This is not for play. This is for real. The stuff that we're going to share with you all tonight. We all talk about the front row. We've served so many families that have sat on that front row, and like I said before, the front row is not fun. We've all been there, and we have to bury our loved ones, which makes it even worse. But we're going to get into that. But before we go, we're going to do our current events. We always like to do current events before we move into our segment. So this week, unfortunately, on this morning, the Pope passed away. The Pope died this morning. So we offer our sympathy and condolences to all those.
Absolutely.
We just want to take a moment of silence for the Pope. We know they have their ritual that they're getting done, and we may expand on that later if we have time. But just a moment of silence for the Pope. So we'll take a couple seconds for that. All right. Thank you.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. So interesting thing with the Pope, they're going to find a new Pope within 30 days.
No, they're going to start
right?
Search. Search.
The search.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if the white smoke within their meeting, if the white smoke goes through the chimney, they found one.
The black smoke,
they ain't found one.
Yeah, they got to vote on it. So just keep looking at your current events, your news, and things like that, and you'll see what's going on with the Pope, the new Pope, who that will be. So again, they do have our sympathy and condolences. Sorry to hear about the Pope passing today. But let's jump right into this thing. Y'all got something on the Pope?
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, Warren. Go ahead.
Can we get a young Pope?
Right.
I know, right?
We need a young Pope.
Because it seems like I swear we get a new Pope like every 5 to 6 years.
We need a young Pope.
And they all 80 and over.
Man, barely walking, got humps in their back and everything.
Oh Lord.
All right, that's all I got to say. And the Pope needs to be the Pope needs to be a grandmother that survives on Big Red and
the last 3 popes was built like Warren.
All right, okay, we're gonna move on to the segment.
Wait, before we move on, Brian King said, "Will the Pope ever be a black man?"
But seriously though, any of our listeners, anybody who's watching, if anybody has or knows whether or not there's some kind of special rule about age limits for the Pope, I'd be really interested in because
Omar says the Pope.
Hey Byron, good evening. Like, share, comment. Please do that for all our listeners and viewers.
He said that the Pope has to be under 80 from now on.
Oh, he said the search starts tomorrow.
Search starts tomorrow, per James Omar Clee. And then we got Brian King on here. Will the Pope ever be a black man?
Let me answer that. Let me answer that. There's 3 black priests in this area. And
that's what I was saying.
A lot of them only want to be at the priest level because of 1, the responsibility. 2, it's a lot of conspiracies, and a lot of them are going down for different sexual predator, and a lot of the Catholic schools are closing. So it's too much going on that the black ones that I've spoken with in this area, they don't want that type of responsibility. And there's one here that's actually married. And at one time they could not be married. It's one here that's actually married. So when you
move up, you
can't.
He's Catholic.
He's Catholic.
That might be the top of his. That might be the height of how high he can go because he chose to marry.
Right.
But there are a few black cardinals.
Yeah, the cardinals. Yeah.
Well, so that is
you have to at least be a cardinal in order to be voted in.
Right. All the cardinals will vote on it.
It may not happen in our time.
Mr. King,
you the baby. You can be around for a while.
Yeah. Val de Jesus. Hey everybody. Hey.
What up, man?
Hey,
what up,
though? Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. And please make sure you send your comments in. We're gonna acknowledge you and everything. And then James Omar Clee said again, you have to be under 80 to be the Pope.
Well, I swear they must be 79.
Dude, I was just gonna say that, man. These cats be looking old, man.
Yeah. Well, you know how that goes.
Hear you.
And there's currently one black from Africa
we can't hear you.
that is in the running. So, hey, look, we're gonna watch that. Let's make sure we stay into that and see what's going on. But as Brian King said, I'm not holding my breath. So we'll see. All right. So thank y'all for coming on. Please comment and share. Tell your groups what we're talking about tonight, because I'm telling you, don't want to miss it. It's going to be a vulnerable state for a lot of us, most of us, all of us. So,
ready.
You got to have your tissue box ready.
Your brother said the mafia will determine it.
That's my brother. The mafia.
For real, Brian. For real, Byron. For real.
You never know.
That's some.
All right,
that's cartel decision. Hey, Warren, you need to go to your audio and do your settings and change your audio. All right, bro, play the video.
Yeah, we can't hear you, man. Oh, he muted himself. He didn't put himself in timeout.
He might have to log off a little bit.
Yeah. So we'll get that together. Warren will be back. So while we're doing that, we're gonna go ahead and get our disclaimer out the way. We definitely got to put this up here. So as you see at the bottom, the views of the podcast are those of individuals, not any firm or any companies. We don't represent anybody but ourselves. So, what you hear today is all about us and all from us. So it's going to be genuine and authentic tonight, and we just really appreciate you all being on here with us. All right, so you see it down there. It's scrolled a couple times, and then tune in. Make sure you go to our website, tilldeathdous.com. Subscribe there. Subscribe to the YouTube. Subscribe to our Instagram and all of that, and you can go and see everything there. All right.
Get them numbers up. Get them numbers up.
Yeah, we need to get them numbers up. So tonight's title is The Front Row. Right? Today is The Front Row. So for those who don't know, us in the funeral business consider the front row is the row that you sit on, usually as the immediate family. All right. So typically your immediate family sits up front, right where the casket is, or the memorial table, or the urn, or anything like that. And you sit there and you look at your loved one's remains the entire service, right? So you're sitting up front and you're right there up front. So we're going to go around the horn. We're going to start with Charmaine Brown from Maryland. You're on mute, Charmaine, if you didn't know. You got a timeout. So we want to go ahead and kind of give a little thing on how did you get into funeral service and then your front row experience.
Well, I got into it. We're family owned and operated, number one. I lived in a funeral home for majority of my life, basically the first 16 years from birth until I went basically to high school. During that time, during the time of living in the funeral home, I may have experienced 5 immediate deaths, which was my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, my paternal aunt, and a great aunt, actually 2 great aunts. And then as a child, the only close death was a great grandmother. Being in the funeral industry, I found interest in how my parents help folks. I also like what my dad was doing before we had OSHA and all of that kind of stuff to come through. I used to watch my dad help, prep the bodies and all, especially dressing. And I grabbed something with the babies. The babies has always been my thing. Even now, when it comes to the babies, my dad and my brother allows me to handle everything when it comes to the kids. Now that I have lost a child, in my earlier time, I've lost pregnancies. One was because of occupational, being in a prep room and not knowing things. And the doctor said, hey, what do you really do with yourself? I'm getting a lot of feedback from somebody. I think, yeah, there we go. The doctor had to get nosy and say, what do you really do? And I had to tell him, hey, I work in a funeral home. At that time, I was in a prep room with my dad, doing my apprenticeship portion. And he was like, yeah, well, I think this is all going to be contributed to your occupational health. So dealing with losing a pregnancy because of that, I understand what parents go through now when it comes to losing a baby. And 2, losing a daughter 3 years ago. I've lost a daughter. I did not birth her. I partially raised her. I've been around her since she was 18 months. She went back to her biological mother at the age of 10. So I had her, 8. I had her for a long time. And even when she went back to her mom, I still had access to her to be a parent towards her. At her time of death, it was untimely, of course. But it was due to an overdose. And it put things at a different perspective because I had a funeral director to listen to, which was my brother. My brother ended up being my funeral director because my ex-husband is her biological father. Since my ex-husband and I don't communicate well, my brother was the medium person when it came to handling things. So my funeral director told me, I don't think this is something that you need to go in the prep room and see. He also said that, maybe you should just stay home for the rest of the week and let us handle things. I said, no, I should be okay. I don't think I don't think it's that bad. I've seen a lot in my time of being here. And just so happened I had to go back there to put something in the prep room. And that same week we had a burn victim. And I walked in and said, well, goodness, I thought that man went to the crematory already. My brother looked at me and closed the bag real fast. He said, I thought I told you don't come back here. I said, look, I got something to do. But I thought that man was going to the crematory. He said, no, that's Dejanay. So I stopped in my tracks unexpectedly, didn't know it. Didn't immediately cry at that time. But when I got back upstairs and it dawned on me that I think the biggest thing was trying to explain to her father that couldn't understand a lot of stuff, that he will not be able to see his baby. That helped me understand how to deal with other parents when it comes to explaining how you're not going to be able to see your baby because they're in a decomposed state. Prior to her dying, I've had a couple aunts and uncles to pass. Both my grandparents passed in Philadelphia, back to back, 6 months apart. And I think after my grandparents dying back to back, I've gotten to a point in life at a certain age, and when people go through certain sicknesses, death cannot be skipped. So I'm in the mental state of, we're going to die. That's just reality. We're going to die. It's just all in the matter of when and how. And I just pray to God, if I go in my sleep. I don't go tragically. I tell my kids, if y'all see me sleeping too long, come get me. If I die in my bed, make sure the windows are open, the cooler house off, and make sure y'all take all the blankets off of me so I won't decompose. Because we've seen plenty of people to come in and they're being left and not tended to in certain conditions. And that was how my daughter was found, in a decomposed state, because she started off with people and not communicating. So it takes a toll on you when it deals with that. But what was most comforting to me was my colleagues coming from different places to help with those services. Wendal, Sean, Harvell, Ryan Buckland, Justin Wright, Alvita Westcott, my staff, Darnell Robinson. I'm sorry, y'all call him Barry Robinson. Barry Robinson. These people are from New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Delaware, Philadelphia. Patrina Mooney, she was my mentee through the funeral industry, but she was also working in this area at a corporate firm. She came and assisted. There's a picture that I have that have all of us on the front where my colleagues came and assisted in doing the services. I typically don't sit on the front pew only because certain things agitate me during services. One, when people take too long to do what they're supposed to do on the program, I've became impatient with that. So I tend not to sit in the services. I barely sit in a service doing my own funerals working. So to sit in a service, I have not lost my parents yet, fortunately. I have not lost my parents. And I tease different colleagues and tell them, when my parents go, y'all know I'm really not going to sit inside that church. I'll sit in the lobby and greet people as they're coming in. But I don't think I would sit too much on the front pew. When my daughter died, I stayed in the back. Not because I didn't get along with certain people. It was really because I felt more comfort in the back with my industry family. Wendal and Sean jumped on the organ until my musician
And
came.
You never sent me a check for that.
Right. And, right. Antonio Tucker, he read the family in. So when the rest of the family seen that I had a bigger support system behind me, that was more comforting to me than to sit on the front pew and to go through what they had to go through. I still deal with that type of stuff. I still have my moments. We don't speak about having our moments. My moments may be different. I sit back because I know certain holidays was Dejanay's favorite holidays, because she liked to eat. Somebody's house is catching on fire because she likes to eat. So certain things will trigger her. Sterling gave me a necklace with her picture on it. I wear it sometimes. I deal with things that way. But other than that, I think I've really become not necessarily desensitized, but we gonna die. Like, it's reality. I've become realistic with life and death. And that's what a lot of people have not come to grips with, that we're not skipping death at all.
No. Well, Charmaine, thank you for sharing that, because I learned some stuff about you today that I didn't even know. So definitely appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, I didn't know you was that strong.
Yeah, that's some real stuff right there. So I appreciate you sharing that. And you touched on
I didn't know you were that strong.
Yeah. You touched on a really good subject that a lot of people, even our family members, don't understand what it's like to lose a loved one and the bond that we have in funeral service. Because sometimes you'll get a question, why you got to go to this national conference, or why you got to go here, or why you got to do that. And they may not be in funeral service. They don't understand how that bond between all of us is like, if something happens to any of us on this podcast, I know we're going to be there.
Right.
I'm not worried about it. I can call any one of y'all and say, hey, I need some help. And y'all going to be there. If you can't, you're going to be there anyway.
Right.
So that's real talk, Charmaine. So thank you for sharing that. You see why she's the mother. So that's why she's the mother. Yeah. So we're going to move to our next person. So Miss Tiffanie, the princess. We're going to do ladies first today, gentlemen. So we're going to put you on the front street and ask you to share your story. Get your tissues ready.
I'm on ponytail.
Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Now I'm good. So I'm going to really try my best to make this no tears. As far as getting through how I ended up in this business, that's easy. My family has a funeral home here in Philadelphia. I kind of was around it my whole life. Never really thought that I was going to do it. But after I made a decision, once I started college, I was a completely different major. Made a decision that I didn't like kids that much, so I didn't want to teach. And yeah. So my mother suggested to me that because I always had an interest in doing hair and nails and makeup and all that kind of stuff, hence the princess. My mother made a suggestion to me about, hey, why don't you, do what your cousins do? You can still do hair, you can still do makeup, just in a different way. And it kind of just was a no-brainer. I just was like, okay, and there it was. So I worked with my family for quite amount of years. I kind of left for a little while, came back, and then I made the decision. Well, I left in 2013 permanently. Took a year off just to decompress, get myself together, make some decisions about life. And I actually ended up started working with my ex-husband. So for folks that know, they know, and everybody was shocked, like, what? You're going where? You're working with who? Because anybody that knew my marriage and divorce, it was not fun in the beginning. But we were at a point where we were beyond all of that. We met in mortuary school. We were best friends in school. And, things happen, they end, we move on. But we were back to that point of being friends again. And he had opened up a funeral home. He needed help. I needed a job. And it worked out. And here I am 11 years later. So now we kind of got a partnership. We're good to go. So that's my backstory in a nutshell of how I got in the business. As far as funeralizing people, early on, my grandparents, my mother's parents, my grandmother, who was my ace, was the first death that I remember experiencing. And while she's been gone a long time, I could still cry on a dime when it comes to her. And my cousins took care of her service, and that really kind of solidified for me that I definitely thought that I wanted to go to mortuary school. But it wasn't until my grandfather passed that, again, my cousins took care of my grandfather. And at that point, I was sure that I was going to go to mortuary school. And because I just liked not only the fact that hair and makeup, but I just like being able to take care of people and help people when they can't help themselves. Like, this is a situation that when you're in it, you don't know how to navigate it. You don't know what to do. You don't know what's coming next. And to be able to be the funeral director to kind of navigate and help them is something that I made the decision that I wanted to do it. So those were the two early deaths that I experienced not working in the business. But then past that, there were a couple of people who I knew that had passed and it wasn't serious. But when it came down to having to take care of people that I cared about, there were two deaths that were extremely hard for me to get through, and I still struggle. One of them was one of my girlfriend's son. He was 19. It was a car accident, and 5 kids were in the car. He was the only one that died. So her son and my son are the same age. They grew up together. They were in karate, you know, even though they went to separate high schools, they still maintained contact. So they were good friends. So that one was the first real hard experience that I had to be the funeral director, but I was also grieving because he was like a second kid to me. So that one was tough. I didn't know how to really navigate through that, but I made it. Then beyond that, my other grandparents passed, my dad's parents, and those were tough, but it was a different tough because they were both up in age and had ailments. So I was able to deal with their deaths a lot easier. I cried a little bit, but I did all the preparations. I dressed both my grandparents. I made sure that I did everything, worked the funerals, handled everything for them. And that was my coping mechanism, was to be able to work it and do that and get through it. So no, I didn't sit on the front row, but I was working. But the most recent passing that I went through was my cousin. And I still struggle with that one because it was very unexpected. He and I were like this. He was the oldest cousin and I was right behind him. So that I still struggle because while I couldn't sit on the front row, there was no way in the world I would have been able to sit there and not work his service. Like, I needed to be in front, in charge, making sure that everything went the way it was supposed to, because that was my way of trying to get through it. But I didn't do a very good job because when it was time to close the casket down, I lost my shit. So then I'm like, oh God.
But that's what helps most. That piece there, knowing that you did what you had to do.
Director. I didn't feel that I was being a good funeral director. I rode in the hearse. I didn't want to drive the hearse because I didn't think that I'd be able to get to the cemetery. But when we got to the cemetery again, I'm trying to do my, your ending speech and your announcement of everything that I normally would do. Couldn't get through it. My ex-husband ended up having to navigate it because I just was a ball of tears in a basket case. And he's been gone 2 years and it's like yesterday. So I still struggle with that one. And being on the front row is not fun because you, as the funeral service professional, want to make sure that everything goes exactly as it's supposed to. And if not more. But then on the back end, you have to figure out how to process your own grief. And it's a tough thing to do. And I'm still trying to figure it out.
I think the best part is knowing that you're doing the job that you would want someone to do. And that's the easiest part. When my cousin Anita died last year, we were at the 40 and under. And I sent my son over. He was going over anyway to sit with her because she basically raised my children while I worked because she was our secretary in the funeral home. So when it came down to making certain decisions, it didn't matter. I made sure I was on that phone doing things because she was in her transition. She had cancer, so she was in her transition. I was down in that lobby bawling until I went to the bar. And then Jeremy Fakes from out of Mississippi. I asked him to say grace. When I tell you this man prayed.
Oh yeah, that
And
joker
got
can
me
pray.
together.
That joker can pray.
Yes, and he got me together, and I was worse. But knowing that you were able to do that and close the casket like you would want it to be done, and that way you don't have to complain later, that's most helpful when it comes to us doing this, Tiffanie.
Yeah, Tiffanie, thank you so much for sharing your story. Brian King, appreciate your comment there. You definitely have to be a strong individual.
That's my
to do you guys'
cousin's
job.
brother. That's my cousin. So this is his brother I'm talking about.
Oh wow, look at that.
Thank you for tuning in, man.
Yeah,
Definitely got our
thank you for
condolences.
watching. Yep. So Tiffanie, thank you for sharing that. Like I said, we're being vulnerable tonight, so it's kind of like one of those things you don't get to see this often because people think we have no heart, no feelings, but we're flesh too. You know, our flesh hurts. So we're gonna move on to the next person, but but thank you, Brian King. Yeah, we appreciate you, brother. We'll move on to the deacon.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
All right. There we go.
Just a little bit about how I got into funeral service. I am a first generation funeral service provider. I'm funeral director and embalmer. My family did not work in the business. I actually in 1996 was blessed and fortunate enough to meet the Johnson family out of McKinney, Virginia. At that time, we had one location in McKinney, Virginia, and I ran into Joe on a service that was at my church. I'll never forget that day. And I had been around to a couple of funeral homes in the Petersburg area, and I was a musician before I was a mortician. And so they would call me to play for the funerals, but nobody would let me do anything at the funeral home. So I was there, and I began to keep the office, began to go on calls. And at that time, I was in high school. So when I graduated in 1998, that was the year that flows and kind of other stuff. That was my high school year. That was my senior year. In January, we were ready to take our exams. I got a call that my mother had been rushed to the hospital, and that she was in Southside Region. I'll never forget it. I went on and took the exam, and I believe 6 days later, she passed away at MCV. I was just 2 years working at the funeral home, just had started with the Johnson family, and that was a tragic loss for me. I did not handle any part of the services. At that moment, I hadn't even gone to mortuary school. So I had to process that. Senior high school, get to walk across the stage, lost my mother. And then a couple of years after that, her mother, which was my grandmother, passed away about maybe 3 or 4 years after that. So it was one loss after another. But I was then in mortuary school, and I was then able to handle the arrangements for my grandmother. I'll never forget that. She passed away in John Randolph Hospital that year, and I was able to handle the arrangements for her. Then, of course, had several other deaths. So didn't have any tragic deaths in my early years before I became a funeral director. Just had family deaths, nothing that was real tragic or couldn't get through. But that was a space in my life there in high school. My last year, that was a tough spot, but I think I was able to work through that. So I got licensed in 2002 in the state of Virginia. And so I've been working with Johnson's Funeral Home ever since then. I've been blessed to be amongst a blessed family who has been a blessing to me. And we have just had a great relationship, and I thank God for them. I couldn't imagine myself being anywhere else at this moment when I look back on it. So that's a little bit of how I got into funeral service, a little bit of my loss being on the front row early on in funeral service. Then later on, after I lost my grandmother and my mother, I did also lose my other grandmother, which was the one who actually raised me. My grandmother, Lena, most people knew her. And that was back, I can't remember the year, but anyway, I was able to handle her services. And then going back a little bit at my wedding, I know everybody remember my wedding who was there. That was a happy day for me and Raven. But actually walking down the aisle, a special guest in my wedding, who was like godmother to me, she passed away walking down the aisle at my wedding. She died in the church. We had to maneuver some things around before the bride found out, before my wife found out. After the wedding was over, we told her about it. She actually died at our wedding. And that's a day we'll never forget. She was close to both of us. So that was a death that took a lot out of all of us. We actually didn't go on our honeymoon until we buried her, and then we went on our honeymoon after that. So some tragic deaths, but being on the front row, I've experienced it. Then later on in life, my wife had never had any really close deaths in her family. Then her grandmother passed away, her uncles, and then tragically her mother passed away. Not to say tragically, but unexpectedly, her mother passed away, and then a couple of years after that, her father. So both of my mother-in-law and father-in-law passed away. I want to touch on what Charmaine talked about a little bit earlier. For me, I didn't have to be, I planned both of the funerals, but I did not want to work the funerals. I had colleagues. Charmaine was one of them, came down, and friends who came and directed the services. For me, I don't feel like I have to be in charge as long as I know it's going to go okay. I know some people have that nervous energy, but I wanted to be there for my wife. I wanted to be on the front row. I didn't want to be running to see if the limousine was out there and what time. I wanted to be the husband I needed to be during that time. So being on the front row as the funeral director, I'm a little bit opposite from everybody else. I know the other people can handle it, so I let them do it. I mean, of course, I want to, help pick out the casket, make sure those things are done. But facilitating on the day of the services, I trust my friends and my firm enough to know that things will go okay. So I'm a little bit different from everybody with that. I'll sit there on the front row and have to, just bear through it and kind of be there for my family. I want to be with them. So that's a little bit about tragic deaths, sudden deaths, but through it all, God's been good to us, and we make it through it. So I thank God for each one of you, my colleagues that's on here tonight. All of you have been blessings to me in the time of bereavement, the recent times of bereavement that I had from my family. So I thank each of you, but just a little bit to share about being in the front row.
And I want to thank your wife for that lovely outfit from her father's funeral, because my dress busted up the entire back the morning of, and I only brought one dress. And I had to go down to her closet and get me a whole outfit.
And
I was looking like the first lady.
Yeah. It's all about connection.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendal. Appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything. Like I said, we know some things about each other, but we don't know everything. So you always pick up some little tidbit, out of there. And so thank you for sharing all of that. So now we're gonna go all the way to Texas. Then we're gonna come back to Virginia. So we're gonna go over to Adrian, the man.
I ain't as strong as
y'all. Funeral service,
I'm not as strong as y'all. So, nevertheless, how I got into the funeral business, I actually, back in 2005, I lost a close relative from the beginning of December of 2005 to the beginning of January going into 2006. I literally was at a funeral every week. It was an uncle, it was an aunt, it was a cousin. Then my great uncle who actually taught me me and my cousins how to be hands-on, fix this, build that, horses, greyhounds, all that. He passed away. And so I was at the wake service, uh, Golden Gate Funeral Home, which we all know, John Beck with Golden Gate Funeral Home down here in Dallas. They buried the majority of my family. His father, John Beck was Sr., and my father were great friends. So nevertheless, I was at the wake, and John Jr. was sitting in the car, and I was just like, man, I walked outside, my mind is just racing. I was young. And so I went to him and I'm like, man, what do y'all do? And so he told me about the program that they do have still at Golden Gate, which is called the Ride Along program. And it's just an open and honest look into the funeral industry if you want to, have an open and honest look. However, it's normally a weekend thing. I literally went to the funeral home that following Monday, literally, and it went into 12 and a half years later. I worked at Golden Gate Funeral Home literally for 12 and a half years. I got some of the most best extensive and deep training that you could possibly get. I forever will love John Beckwith Jr., forever will love Golden Gate Funeral Home for what they taught me. I use that now, which is why I stand and I operate, in strategic, I stand and I operate in integrity in this funeral industry. That's why I love it so hard. My first front row experience was my son. I actually lost my child at 7.5 months. He was 2.5 months premature. This will be my second born. If he was living now, he would be about to be 22. 2.5 months, like I said, premature. Left lung didn't develop all the way. Had an enlarged lung on the right side. However, he had to get a trach in his throat, and we were out. I was young at the time. I was 22 years old. I was DJing hard. I was DJing maybe literally 6 days out of the 7 on a weekly basis. Residents in the club, all that. And I was married at the time. We had got married. She got pregnant. She was in college. Of course, like I said, I was DJing. She got pregnant. Her mom really pressed the issue on us not having a child out of wedlock. You know, she was a musician at the church, all the good things that make sense because they did make sense. However, I was at work. She was gone. We had an at-home nurse at the time, through Children's Hospital, and we got a phone call that my son had stopped breathing. I'm rushing from where I'm at on the side of town. They rushing from where they at. We all let's meet up at the hospital because by this time they had to call the ambulance to, get him there quicker than we can get to him. Uh, got to the hospital and man, he fought for hours. They got his breathing back going and everything was good. And we got him home. Again, another nurse comes back. True story. True story. And we had just left to go to the store to get Pampers and milk and everything that he needed. And no later than we had left, we got a call that he had stopped breathing again. He had and got back to the hospital. He had ended up dying, passing away from heart failure. Never had heart conditions, never had a heart problem till this day. And I know it may sound weird to a lot of people, but this is true story. Till this day, from the time my son stopped breathing to the time he was pronounced deceased, till probably it's been well over 20 some years to this day, y'all. That agency that nurse worked for, she just got ghosts. They couldn't find her, didn't know where she was at. The residency that was on the application, she wasn't there. They felt like because we were not there or we were young parents, they say that she pretty much felt like she took his life into her own hands. They don't know if she did something wrong versus she didn't do something right. They don't know if she gave him too much medicine versus she didn't give him enough. All they know is he never, like literally, he never had no heart failure problems, no heart issues, nothing. But my baby passed away, of heart failure. And that was like one of my worst times. Uh, wasn't in the funeral industry then, but a lot of my colleagues, my managers, owners at the clubs I worked for, they all was there, consoled me. It was beautiful. Everything was good. My recent front row experience was my grandmother, my mother's mother. Everybody who knows, I wear her around my neck just like I wear my son at times. But my grandmother, y'all, my grandmother, I won't say she beat death because we can't beat death. I will say that the Lord blocked her, or declined her from coming in so many times. So many times, so many times. My grandmother was one of the most strongest women that I have ever met in my freaking life. And I think I know that's the reason why when it comes to women, my respect level is so broad and so high, because of my grandmother. I literally was raised by women. My upbringing was not, oh, dad in the house, every night, 365 days a year. That wasn't my bringing. I had a strong black mother. I had a strong black aunt. Rest in peace to my aunt Joni. But yet, most of all, I had a strong black grandmother. And so these women gave me what I need. And so my grandmother, when she passed, my grandmother did not leave this earth until me and one of my other cousins, who's the pastor who also eulogized her, until we made it to the house. We were her boys, and I sat on that front row, and it took everything in me to not go crazy. I had a Tiffany moment. I did the crowning ceremony for my grandmother. Yeah, I think y'all saw it. Uh, I did the crowning ceremony for my, and I stepped like I never could step before. But I be god dog. When I got down to the end and I laid that crown, it was no more good for me. So I say to everyone, and like Charmaine was even saying, like my sister was saying, believe it or not, you all, that's the beginning of the good feeling. That's the beginning of the release. You have to let go. You have to cry. You have to scream. You have to shout. Whether you do it at the church, whether you do it in the car, whether you do it in the closet, in the shower. Listen, you have to release. And I'm surprised. I literally thought I was going to break down even talking about my grandmother, but I'm surprised at even my strength. But you have to understand that pride comes with a price. If you're not getting paid for it, listen, it ain't no good. Understand that being strong comes with a price. In certain situations, in certain circumstances, you have to be vulnerable. You have to let go. You have to release. You have to be that weak person, not because someone has to pray on you or someone is praying on you, but yet because that's going to help you to get that strength that you need later on. So when you're sitting on that front row, and it's your mother, it's your father, it's a child, it's a grandmother, it's a sibling. Listen, understand that it's okay for you to cry. Understand that it's okay for you to scream. It's okay for you to shout. We understand as undertakers, we understand as morticians and all that, that sometimes people do too much. True story. But understand that you'll know for yourself when it's your time to release. You're going to know for yourself when it's your time, to say, I just got to let it out. There's no time limit on grief. There's no time limit on grieving. And there's no description. Everybody grieves different. Everybody grieves longer than others. Some people grieve shorter than others. So, from us professionals who have sat on the front row, from us professionals who take care of you all on the front row, understand that it's okay to release.
Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate you sharing, your story and everything. Like I said, we always learning something, man. That's a story. So we appreciate you sharing all of that personal information with us. I do want to go to the comments, and we're gonna go to Warren. Miss Raven said, "Y'all, you did a good job. You did a great job. LOL, you did a great job, Wendal." And then
that was probably for Charmaine.
Oh, that was for Charmaine. Oh, okay. I thought she was talking about you.
No, that was for Charmaine. What's up, sis? What up, Raven?
There we go. There you go. And then, shout out to my wife, Katina. She had a question.
Katina with the long question.
We got that's Katina, baby. That's her. Did any of you feel extra pressure or anxiety to ensure everything was perfect because you were the embalmer and our funeral director? Honey, that is a great question. But let's get to Warren. I want to make sure because we got about 15 minutes or so. We may go over a few minutes, but that is a great question. Actually, you know what? We'll just go ahead and take that. Did any of you feel extra pressure or anxiety to ensure everything was perfect because you were the embalmer and or funeral director?
Man, yes. Dude, I ain't never paid attention to flowers in my life like that, man. I made sure, dude, I made sure every petal. Matter of fact, I even went to the store. I don't know if y'all, I'm sure y'all know the tricks of the flowers. I went to the store, got me some oil sheen. Man, I sprayed every single one of them goddamn leaves to make sure all them bad boys are shining. You hear me? They had to be glossy.
Oil sheen on your flowers. Okay,
on the greens.
On the
greens.
greens.
Okay.
On the greens. Yeah, spray it on the greens. It's gonna shine them up. It's gonna lube them up.
On the greens.
Right.
That's crazy. All right, Warren. Are you on mute? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Oh, I need to unmute you. There we go. All right, Warren. What you got, the baby?
Unmute your mic, Warren. There we go.
You get it? Stop. Keep going back and forth. No, we can't hear you.
Just take the headphones off and talk.
He already did that.
We can't hear you.
Oh Lord. Now you was talking good earlier.
Yeah, he's not on mute either.
While he's trying to reset, let me answer your wife's question. The past couple relatives I've had, I've ran the services. I did the services. I was the funeral director to my family. I have an uncle that during my cousin Diana's transition, her sister called me. Her sister was out in Rockville, Illinois, and she said, "Look, Uncle John and Aunt Naomi is getting tired. Can you please go sit at the hospice with her? You know, they have a little more time for her life or whatever." So I went over to the hospice and I sat with her. I prayed with her. I played gospel music and everything. And when she actually passed, I told the hospice nurse, "Hey, I think she actually died. You want to check her vitals?" So the lady said, "Well, you can call the funeral director." I said, "Well, I am the funeral director." So she was like, "Well, do you all just come and sit and wait for people to die?" I said, "No, she's my cousin." And my brother had actually just left out, and I had to call him back to tell him come back and get her. So the nurse came in and said, "I know that guy, but I don't know who you are." I said, "Well, that could be a good thing." So I was sitting there at her transition time. But when it came time to plan her services, my uncle was like, "Well, you sat with her long enough and y'all joked about what she wanted to do. So you go ahead and do what she wanted to do." She was a Delta, so I found the red and silver casket from Batesville. I allowed the rest of the family, her brothers and sisters, because she had plenty of those, to do the flowers and stuff. My uncle is a minister, so I let him handle the service portion. But when it came to the certain details, I handled that. We had an antique hearse at the time where we had a speaker. Did he get straight yet? Well, we had a speaker
Warren,
to play music. No, we had a speaker to play music outside the back of it. And when the family came out of the cemetery, because her services were done in a mausoleum, when the family came out of the mausoleum building, we played "Because I'm Happy" by Bruno Mars or whoever it was at the time, and people dancing the Soul Train line as they were coming out. And that gave a lot of peace and closure, because she loved to dance, she loved to have fun, and she loved to have a party, but she knew Christ first. So she had that Christ service at church, but once we got to that cemetery, that was it. Tap on. Can we hear you
in
now
Baltimore.
more? No, we can't hear you now more. Right, only in Baltimore we do that. So
Warren, you with us, Warren?
Helps. No, he might have to log all the way off again. I did that last week. Come all the way out, baby, and come back in. Well, let's go to you, Mike, since he's trying to get himself together.
Yeah.
You good? Or Warren, keep on. We got like 7 minutes.
We can go over this time.
Let's see.
Don't try to skip out on this one, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh no,
Go
I
ahead,
can
Big
tailor
Mike.
mine. I've told my story so many times. I can tailor it to 3 seconds, really. So we'll get there. Let me see here. What did Warren do? There we go. I guess Warren will come back in, but I'll share mine real quick.
Okay, what is that behind Tiffanie? What is that?
That cat.
Oh my God!
What is that?
You know, y'all know the cat lady.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm gonna get right into it. So basically, the way I'm Mike Hamlar from Virginia, and the way I ended up in funeral service was, my dad died at 49 from multiple sclerosis. I was a junior at Wake Forest University playing football. My freshman year, my redshirt freshman year, I started. It was, "Oh, he going pro. He doing all this. He doing that, doing this," and got hurt my freshman year. Finally got healthy my junior year was playing. Then my dad died. So then I came home, and then within 3 weeks, my great uncle was one of the founders of our funeral home. So I'm third generation owner. We've been around 73 years. And when they read his will, they said he left me his part of the funeral home. And, everybody's like, "Mikey, what are you going to do? Are you going to come back home?" And there was a lot of family, "Oh, you got to come back home. You got to come back home." And, I had a good opportunity and a good possibility. And it's all luck and timing, if you go to that next level or not. But my coach said I had the ability to do so. But I made a decision. I came back home. And so that's how I ended up in the funeral business. And since then, I bought out my business partner. My wife is now licensed. She's at the office. We built a good team. We have about 35 employees. We have 2 locations, going to expand to a third. We have an event center. So all of it seemed like it's just in God's time. I tell people all the time, as a person of faith, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Because, he's going to laugh you right out the door, because that's just the way it works sometimes. So that's how I got in funeral service on the real quick, and everything else. So basically for me, that was tough because we owned the funeral home, right? And when my dad died, I broke down at the door. I couldn't even get across that threshold to go into the chapel and to go into the building. And, people think, "Oh, well, you're in the funeral business. You're numb to this. You can do this all day long." And I mean, really, you have to be in a certain space. right? You really got to get to that point where you got to separate what's going on with you and what's going on serving these families, because we always consider what we do in ministry, right? So that was my dad. And I mean, for those that know me as Mikey, they knew my dad took me everywhere. When I say everywhere, I was places I probably should not have been at 3 and 4 years old. You know, up there, I have this place called Laco's. I was up in Laco's playing the games. They doing all this other stuff, you know, boom, boom rooms, the whole nine, you know, back in the day. So
You
it
got
was
the
really,
juke joint.
the juke joints. It was real cool. So, you know, we up there just doing all kinds of stuff. I'm riding at 3 o'clock in the morning with my dad. You know, we riding around.
I didn't know they had juke joints in Roanoke. Really?
Yeah, man, we have everything down here. I'm telling you, everything. It rolled up. So for me, that was really tough. And I did not realize how young my father was. Right. The older I get, the younger my dad seems. You know, being 49, and you know, I'm 43 now, and I'm just like, wow, that's kind of crazy. It's like, you know, a few more years, my dad died. You know, he was done. And even before then, he had multiple sclerosis. So for those who know that disease, it's terrible. He had the most aggressive kind. It's a neurological disease. There's no cure for it. You know, they have he was taking Avonex and some other things, but it just didn't work. So for me, that was tough. And then sitting on that front row, we were at the church. We were at First Baptist Church, Gainesboro. That's the Hamlar family church. That's where I grew up. You know, I split time with that church and my mom's church at Bethlehem Baptist. I was baptized at Bethlehem. I'm still a member at Bethlehem. But being at that time, and you know, some of my teammates came up, my coach came up, and just having that support system, right? Because I wasn't in funeral service. I was still in college. Down there, and some of my friends came, and you know, you don't realize how much that means to you. And I didn't realize it then. You know, I just realized how much that really meant recently, like in the last 5 years or so, because I've had my head in the dirt and just grinded out for the last 15, 20 years. And, you know, I'm celebrating 22 years now, 22, 23. I don't even count anymore. But I mean, for my dad, my dad was like everything for me. So when people ask me, like, why do you go see all your kids? I've always posting about his kids. He's always going with his kids, and he's always doing this. And I tell people, I said, you never know when a young man or young lady is having issues at home, may not have a father figure, mother figure, or anybody at home, and they coddle up to you, right? And then you want to just kind of take care of them. You kind of just want to help them however you can, you know, just all kinds of stuff. And don't just shed them away, because you could be that deciding factor for them where they want to be a doctor, be a lawyer, be in the funeral business, be an undertaker, be all these different things. You know, I tell that a lot of times when I go speak at places. You know, you just never know when that young person is going to be there. It's like, oh, wow. Well, since, you know, I know Charmaine and Wendal and Warren and Tiffanie and Adrian and Mike and all these other people, I might want to be a funeral director when I grow up, you know, or, you know, embalmer or whatever. So it's just really interesting how it all works out and being on that front row. You know, my wife has had some tragic losses here over the years, and I don't like sitting I don't like sitting in the pews. That's just me. I don't know if that's just my personality type or whatever. I like working. To me, the service is the way I show my love for my family. You know, so I'm serving, and I'm gonna make sure everything is right, like I do for all of our families. So I don't sit still during funerals. You know, I know somebody said it earlier. I'm gonna work. You know, even to somebody that we know, we work, and we get everything together there. So for me, that was my story on how I got into funeral service real briefly, and then just sharing with my dad and then my uncle. And I'll say this, and then I'll see if Warren's mic is working. So for me, again, the person of faith, you know, I believe God puts you through tests, and he puts situations in front of you so you know how to handle it when it comes about, right? You know, so I really, really dear to my heart believe that. So over the last 20 plus years, you know, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Okay. Yeah. It's been a whole lot of trials and tribulations, and, you know, people doing this and people doing that. That's another day, another show. But I can just tell you that I was very prepared when the situations came about. You know, even when when I bought my business partner out, I had another company. I did that mergers and acquisitions for 10 years, and I was prepared when that time came, when he accepted that 7-figure buyout. Right. So it's just a lot of things that goes on there, and then we'll touch on it. But I want to make sure Warren has some chance to talk, and has the time to talk. And Warren, did you get your mic fixed?
I had this. Ain't nobody mad but the devil.
Hallelujah.
All right.
Hallelujah.
There you go.
How about
All right,
toss
good.
it?
All right, Warren, we go ahead and share your story, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Listen, all these stories have been encouraging, and I'll say that because even though they are sad, and they are our moments, you made it through every single moment. And since everybody has their favorite saying, because I got stirred up when Adrian was talking. One of my favorite sayings is, "You have made it through every moment up to this point." So every single thing that you went through, you have made it. Let me say this. The front row is not necessarily about the physical front row. And because I've never been on the exact front row, the front row is us taking the moment to be on the other side. Because a lot of people feel like we are just that resilient, that we don't experience death, we don't experience heartache or moments of grief. So, it's just that's what the front row is. And I also say this, and I'm not going to be long. Funeral service was not my first choice. It was not my mother's first choice. For those that know me, they know that I'm also in the family business. We are approaching 90 years of existence in 2 different counties. Hopefully, we'll pick up a few locations. It was acquired by my grandfather. My mother, who was a federal government worker, decided to come back. And she moved us back from Washington, D.C. in 1993. She took over she helped my grandfather with his business. And, now she owns the business with me. We have very similar stories where we went out into the world and we wanted to do because we sometimes had seen too much. And then we came back. The Lord calls us back. So I'll start there, and I'll say that May 25th, 2006, I was the most important man in my life. My grandfather closed his eyes at 5:30 p.m. May 25th, 2006. I had seen him that morning. We were aware that it was give or take. He died of dementia. He died from tachycardia brought on by dementia. I went to the ICU at Southside Community Hospital. I talked to him. I said, "Listen, I'll be back at the end of the weekend." And I drove about 20 miles down the road to Holiday Lake, which was my second home. My mom called me after 5:30, and she told me that he had passed. That was my first major death. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't care who you believe, God, me. Because if you've ever been to Holiday Lake in the Appomattox, which I'm sure none of you have, it is a winding road all the way probably 20 or 30 minutes until you get to the major highway. And I don't think I came up off the gas until I hit the highway. It was adrenaline. I literally rode all the way to the funeral home. I got out, I left the car door wide open, and I walked in to the funeral home. At this point, they were bringing my cousins in. My cousins were all over the place, and I literally just sat there. Like, what do you mean? For us, that was he was the pinnacle. He was the anchor for all of us. How dare he be gone? What do you mean? What do you mean? He didn't have permission to die. And at that point, I was very young. So I wasn't young, but I had maybe been driving about a year. And it was a very, very hard thing for all of us. If you ask my mom now, she will tell you, she doesn't remember anything from that day. That was one of those circumstances where we could not work. his funeral. That at that point I was attending. I was an attendant, but she couldn't close the casket. It was nothing like that. She didn't remember anything. And you fast forward to like my grandmother's passing in 2023, it's a whole different ballgame. I'll say that my grandmother did not have that relationship, but it was important for me to remove her from her hospice bed. It was important for me to make sure that all of her wishes were carried out. Her programs were designed by me. The graphics at her church, the flowers were picked out to her specifications. It was the casket that she picked. The only thing I did not have control over was the dress she wore and her hair. I wanted to make sure that her nails were nice because my grandma was a beautician for 60 years. She'd seen Preston curls, Marcel curlers, Jerry curls, shimmering light. Anything that you would put in your hair, and her nails were dark. And I wanted to make sure that her nails were pretty. That was our relationship. It was give and take. It was sometimes dramatic, but that's what we did. And it was just important for me to do that. I didn't work that service. It was more important for my mom and I to close her casket. We were the ones that took care of her. The day of her funeral, I had the worst food poisoning known to man.
I thought it was COVID. I really thought it was COVID.
Running out of service. I literally ran out of service 5 or 6 times because I could not stop vomiting. The service, my voice had been stripped. I was on the program to sing, and my wife ended up,
But your wife tore it up, Warren. Your wife
and tore that song up.
She tore the whole house up. Yeah, she.
So, and I really don't remember. That was my service. I don't remember much of it. I remember us getting to the grave. I got to the grave and went back and sat in the limo, and home got in the bed. There was a lot of drama there that it's so small, but it's all part of what we do. It's all a part of what everybody else has says in regard to us being desensitized. Not desensitized, we just know how to flip the switch. We know how to say, hey, yes, it hurts. Yes, I'm grieving. But right now, I have to do what people know me to do, and I'm trained to do, and that's literally, what I've been trained to do. And like Adrian, I was raised by strong women. I was raised by strong women, and of all the women I was raised by, 2 of them have left this earth. One of them, I could not be there when she passed. The other, which was my godmother, I was trying everything under the sun to keep her here. I had gone to I was, hey, her cancer had spread all over her body. It was in her bones. Hey, what can you do? Is this weed? What is weed? Can I put oil on her? Like, can we put it in her feeding tube? Like, whatever, that will just kind of turn the tide. Yes, I believe in God. Yes, He can do all things, but what about this weed? Can this weed do what it needs to do to turn that around? So we have feelings. And one of the reasons that I want to wrap up is kind of making us full circle. In my 36 years, I've seen 3 popes. I've seen Pope John Paul. I've seen Pope Benedict, and I've seen Pope Francis. Pope Benedict was the only pope that I know of to actually retire, because popes die. They die in that position. He retired. He said, I want to enjoy my flowers while I'm on this side. And of all the people that I've lost, not many of them chose to enjoy their flowers on this side. So even as we have our front row moments, you have to take the time to enjoy your flowers on this side. You don't have to work yourself to death. You don't have to grieve yourself to death. You have people surrounding you. You have people to encourage you. And like everybody else said, having my colleagues show up, even in my food poisonous self, and throwing up every which way. Yeah. I know that I had colleagues from all over were there, and they showed love for my mom and I and the rest of our family, to the point where some of my family was like, who are these people? Where they come from? They're not on there. Because people showed up, and they show up. We show up for each other. So love one another, and just smell your flowers while you got time. That's all I gotta say.
You're on mute, Mike.
You're on mute, Mike.
For once, you're on mute.
Is your mic working?
It's working. I'm muting myself. Well, thank you, Warren, for sharing. I just want to thank everybody for sharing. We all been a little vulnerable tonight, so it's just kind of just sharing that we are real people. The industry, just because we're in the industry, to make it any easier for us, because we do grieve. That's why we do what we do, because we love people and try to serve. But before we get out of here tonight, I got to get a shout out to my line brother, my frat brother. Today, April 21st, 2005, we crossed those burning sands of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. My line name is The Undertaker. Divine Intervention was born. And definitely got to give that shout out before we check out of here. But thanks to everybody. Anybody got any final words? It's 9:12, so I know we Eastern time. So, but I got to recognize, we got some comments in here. Especially got to recognize my wife. She was talking about when I was talking. Thank y'all for your responses. And honey, thank you so much. Always do a good job. And I think Miss Reid was talking about you there, Warren. And then we got one last one. Great job tonight, fam. Appreciate you. Any final words from anybody? This has been one of those shows and segments where we're just, we just out here.
I think we learned a lot about each other tonight. That's one thing that I'm glad we did. We learned a lot about what we've been through, our journey in funeral service. And like I said, it's real important to make sure that we do grieve during the process. Make sure that we don't just departmentalize the grief, and we actually go through the steps we need to do to handle our own, so we can be a blessing and help others.
Well said, Wendal. All right, well, before we get out of here, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram. Make sure you check for next week. Go to our website, tilldeathdous.com.
Sharing, keep sharing.
Sharing.
The website, that website is fire. Why? Because we made it out the group chat.
We made it out the group chat. We got real
bios. Whoa.
Yep, check out the bios and check out the episodes.
I gotta add to mine.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. Adrian got to add on his. So
it's 9:13. I gotta go to this typer.
Yeah. So on behalf of Charmaine, Tiffanie, Adrian, Wendal, Warren, and myself, Mike, I'm from Virginia. Appreciate y'all watching, tuning in. Catch us next week.
Big in Texas.
And next week we'll all be together next week, won't we?
Yeah, live show. We're doing a live show. We'll be in Biloxi, Mississippi. You don't want to miss it. I'm telling you. We got a special.
We're gonna be there
live.
Uh-oh.
So y'all,
we're gonna be there live. So hey, if y'all in Biloxi, we need a background audience.
Hey, follow us so you know where we're gonna be. We're gonna be at the IP Hotel. Let's go. See y'all next week.
Good night.
See y'all, man. Be blessed. Yep.